Hi, this is Ninja2Dan again with another guide video for 7.62 high caliber. This is probably one of the video guides a lot of people have been waiting for, simply because it covers one of the more interesting aspects of the game, and that would be the weapons. In this game, especially with the Blue Sun mod installed, you're going to find a very, very large selection of firearms available. As a quick note again, I'm at game level 12 at this load, so my selection of weapons are going to be quite a bit different than what they will be at some of the earlier levels. As we go to one of these stores, I can go ahead and show you what some of their equipment is. Firearms are generally going to come in a couple of different classes or categories. For pistols, you have your automatics and you have revolvers. Submachine guns are going to be either machine pistols, which I would consider these smaller weapons like the Ingram Max or the smaller Uzis, Scorpions. You have the slightly larger submachine guns. You're then going to move into shotguns. Shotguns, again, a couple of different subcategories. You're going to have your standard pump action shotguns. You're going to have sawed-offs. You're going to have the older style, which are going to be either over, under, or side by side double barrels. I think you even have at some point an older style single shot. With some of the advanced vendors, you'll also have automatic shotguns, such as the AA-12 being a fully automatic capable shotgun, or you have Saigas, which are a semi-auto capable. You then move into your rifles. Rifles are going to be automatic rifles or bolt actions. Bolt actions are generally towards the beginning of the game. You're going to have everything from Mausers, Springfields. You can go into semi-autos such as the Grand, M14s, Mini 30s, Mini 14s. You have a lot of different selection. They also are including weapons from a lot of different nationalities. So you're going to find weapons from Israel, Sweden, Germany, Australia, America, different Soviet manufactured arms, British firearms. There's just a huge selection of firearms. When it comes to the assault rifles, that is generally where you're going to find the biggest selection. They also come in a variety of different calibers. You're going to have 5.56 NATO, 5.56 for the see, where is it? I'm not seeing it, but you're also going to have 5.45, 7.62 NATO, 7.62 by 50, 7.62 by 54R, which is like a Dragunov. The vendors don't always sell everything, but like I was saying, you're going to have just a big selection of calibers. You're also going to get into your precision weapons, which include sniper and marksman rifles. Generally, the difference is a sniper rifle is designed to have a much greater precision, while a marksman rifle is sort of the middle ground between your regular rifles, such as battle rifles and assault rifles, or your sniper rifles. A lot of people are considering marksman rifles, DMRs, or designated marksman rifles. So as you can see, models like this, they are still using a intermediate cartridge, the 5.56 by 45, which is the 5.56 NATO. Doesn't really make that great of a sniper caliber as far as the military standpoint. Law enforcement snipers still do use 5.56 at times because they're engaging targets at shorter ranges. But personally, I would not consider this a sniper rifle. This would be more along the lines of a marksman rifle. On the other hand, weapons such as the M21 has been a very decent sniping platform. Remington 700s, which make up the M24s, these are also a decent bolt-action sniper rifle. PSG-1s are semi-auto, really good. You're also going to get into some of the really big calibers, 50 caliber, 338, stuff like that. You're going to be going into the light machine guns or medium machine guns. Difference is going to be caliber. So firearms is just a very big selection of what you're wanting. Some of them are going to be almost to the point where it's comical to even consider using them, but they still are included just for the hell of it. Some firearms also are going to be released so far into the game levels that by the time that they are released, they're not even viable because they're going to be fairly ineffective, or there's things that are a lot better. We also find different variants. This one, for example, has a little bit of that nice camo style to it. Other than that, though, it's going to be pretty much identical in every way to the other model. Now that you've seen what's available on the vendors, the rest of this I'll probably be using just my own personal inventory to show explanations. So for pistols, again, you have automatics, revolvers, some machine guns. You can see what some of the machine pistols are a little bit smaller. Shotguns, some of the different machine guns, precision weapons. But before we start covering a lot of the different accessories and everything like that, we'll go over some of the basic stats of the weapons. As mentioned in previous guides, you'll be able to look at this section here when I highlight something with a mouse cursor. But because it's hard for me to point to a specific stat this way, I can go ahead and actually review the item itself. The reason I move this out of the way is because if I'm checking out certain weapons, you can fold and unfold stocks this way. Generally, though, when you're looking at a weapon, you're going to be looking at its weight. You'll also be considering its accuracy. Accuracy does not necessarily mean its range, but obviously the more accurate a weapon is, the better range you're going to have out of it. The other thing you want to pay attention to is its rate of fire and its ready time. The time to ready means how quickly can you actually get this weapon raised up and put on target. The time for rate of fire means once you squeeze the trigger, how quickly before you can get another round out. There's also a slash here because some weapons will have multiple numbers. The reason is because this is if it's in a semi-automatic mode. This is when it is in a burst or automatic mode. So for example, with this weapon, it will take 0.36 seconds to get the weapon ready. That means just carrying it in your arms to the point where you're getting it up into a shoulder position. That does not include time that it takes to actually look through the optic and acquire the target. That is simply the time it takes to ready the weapon itself. For the rate of fire, in semi-automatic mode, it's going to take 0.58 seconds to be squeezing off the trigger each time. While you're firing this in a automatic or burst mode, it is firing each individual round at 0.0 seconds delay between each round. Also, with certain weapons that are automatic capable, if you see a burst option, that means that they can fire burst, not just automatic and semi. Some weapons you will also notice that there is no rate for single. That is because this weapon is fired in automatic mode only. That's generally what you're going to find with a lot of the machine guns. And I think the jackhammer shotgun is also auto only. One note is that even though a weapon is auto only, even in the automatic mode, you can still tell it one round and it will only fire off one round, maybe 2 rounds. But it doesn't mean you're going to have to sit there and fire, 10, 15, 20 rounds every squeeze of the trigger. You could set that down. Balance is one of those stats that you're going to see that doesn't quite mean as much. It just depends on how often you're using it. But weight is going to play a factor. One thing to note is that the weight that you see in green here, that is the weight of the default unloaded core weapon. So for example, here this weapon has nothing. There are no modifications attached. There's no ammunition loaded. This weapon is simply stock dry. The weapon weight here says 4 kilos and the weapon here is at 4 kilos. The MP7 here, for example, this has a dry weight of 1.6 kilos, but you can see the current configuration is at 2.14. That is because we've added a sound suppressor as well as the magazine with loaded ammunition. Do not make the mistake of choosing weapons based on the weight here. You want to make sure that you're choosing a weapon based on its weight as you observe it. So as you're moving through viewing different weapons, look at the weight ratio that's listed here. This one being a good example is it's showing it at 3.5 kilos as an unloaded weight. But because of the variety of accessories on here, to include a loaded 100 mount CMAG, suppressor, bipod, optic, and laser, the overall weight right now sitting at 8.59. That's a substantially increased weight difference. If you're trying to find a weapon that is going to fit your allowable amount, that is where you need to be looking. Another thing is, if you see a weapon that has a higher weight, I can show you a good example here. Oops, one's empty. This is the G36 Beta CMAG holding 100 rounds, has a weight of 2.1 kilo loaded. This weapon right now has weight of 4.49, making it very lightweight, but that's because it's using double stacked mags. If I go ahead and swap that out with the CMAG, the weight has now jumped up to 5.62. If you're going close quarters, you might prefer to have a weapon with a lower weight, which is why this one has these smaller magazines. It's going to be up to your personal preference. In order to find out what equipment is compatible with certain weapons, it's pretty easy to do. But generally, the variety of firearms, you're going to find them with different barrel lengths. That generally is going to determine the weapon's accuracy. Also, certain weapons will have a variety of options for accessories. One good example is that for the MG36 here, you can see it has a bipod attached, while down here I have an MG36 that has a foregrip attached. When you're looking over the weapons here, you'll be able to see where a weapon is able to accept attachments or not. For example, down in this section here, if you look at this shotgun, it is not able to accept any accessories whatsoever. This weapon here, if you look down in the bottom corner, you'll see it has aim, laser, flashlight, silencer. The aim and silencer are in green, the others are in white. The reason is because it is able to accept items in those slots. The green ones means that there's something there at this time. White means it can fit it, but it is not currently attached. For this weapon, as an example, the suppressor is at a location that it will not allow you to add a laser or a flashlight at the same time. There are very few weapons that do that, but this one just happens to be one of those. So if I look at this, for example, it is able to take an additional grenade launcher, bayonet, or flashlight. Flashlights and laser modules sometimes will override each other. Sometimes you can have both. Now that I am at the stage of the game where I am using night vision, I do not need flashlights. But if the item is there but grayed out, that means it can take something. There's just not something that's installed at this time. Some weapons you'll see can take a very, very big amount of equipment. Don't let that confuse you. The amount of equipment might also be limited to what's available. For example, I have a sniper rifle that has a silencer, and normally I do not use the term silencer. It is a sound suppressor. This weapon, for example, has a suppressor and a bipod that it is able to attach. I have still not found either the bipod or the suppressor for it. Same thing with the JTAC. I do not have the suppressor for it, so that's why it's not installed. Personally, I prefer to use suppressors on all of my weapons when available. And as you've probably noticed, in my own locker, I try to keep weapons already set so you can basically grab them. Some of them, like the G36s here, do not have magazines. The reason is because I already have others that are already set and ready to rock. So if I need to swap these out or sell them later, I can do so without having to remove as much stuff off them. Attachments you can swap out as needed. For example, this one currently has a grenade launcher installed, but if I chose to, I can swap that out with a bipod. Other examples are weapons that can take bayonets. You cannot have a bayonet and a suppressor installed at the same time. You also cannot have underbarrel launchers and bipods installed at the same time. In some of them, you cannot have a bipod installed with other devices. In order to find out what accessories are compatible, for example, if we grab a SCAR, when you're in your gear screen and you're looking at your accessories, as I've noted before, you will see a variety of accessories compatible with that weapon highlighted. So for example, this one, 5.56, I'm seeing is compatible with the 5.56 suppressor, seeing is compatible with the laser, seeing is compatible with a bipod. Again, if you want the launcher on it, launcher and bipod will override each other. And it could take a variety of optics. So this one, with an accuracy of 50, you are able to fold the stock. So it is possible to use this weapon for a few decent rolls. So you might decide you want to go with an aim point, or you want to go with an ACOG. You could also opt for your night optics. So by placing the different items onto it, but this is one of those ways that allows you to quickly determine what accessories you have for it. Same thing goes with ammunition. If you wanted to see what it will take, simply hold the cursor over that weapon while you use the scroll wheel up and down until you come across the ammunition that is highlighting it. For example, this one is telling me that the magazines it will accept are the Stanag or the drums. So I'm free to add any of those that I see fit. As a side note, when you do go to a merchant, if you are interested in previewing a weapon, don't be afraid to pull it out of the merchant. For example, I'll just take one of the assault rifles. Say the SIG, the 5.51 standard. The stock on it is currently folded right now in its current status it has an accuracy of 37, but that's generally a submachine gun's accuracy level. Seems kind of pathetic for a 5.56 mid-range rifle. By dragging and put it into your inventory, you do need the money for it, but I haven't completely bought it yet. So I can take it and drag it, and then as long as it's held in your hand, you can choose to unfold the stock. Now looking at it, the accuracy has gone up to 45. Okay, if that seems acceptable for me personally. What about accessories? When I look at the weapon from the screen, I can see it takes an aim, which means it'll take some type of an optic device, laser aiming module or LAM. It'll take flashlight, and it'll take a suppressor. I can then go to the gear screen of that vendor, and wow, there are no optics this vendor sells that are compatible with this weapon. I see that it can take the suppressor, that it can take a laser, and ooh, hey, look at that. The laser and the suppressor are not jointly compatible with each other. Well, that sucks. That's not something I want. So then you can go back through and look at some of your other options. For example, we have so let's just say the 416. With the stock folded, it has a range or accuracy of 54, which is pretty damn good. Once you expand the stock, and it now jumps up to 68. That is a fairly accurate rifle. Obviously it's a 20-inch, so it's a full length. But for a standard rifle, that is pretty decent. We also see that it's able to take everything except for the bayonet. So I go in here and, oh hey look, the vendor has a couple optics that are capable. I'm even able to put on long range optics. Let's just say I want to go with the ACOG. And ooh hey, suppressor is compatible. Let's see, laser. Oh hey, what do you know? The laser also works with that. And let's see if we got a flashlight. Oh wow, the flashlight and the laser both. Well, let's see, we can go with the bipod. Or do we want to go, oh hey, what about a grenade launcher? Oh yeah, they don't work. So you can sit there and you can go through and choose. Now that I've got the configuration from the store, again, you can always configure it later with your own personal equipment. Say that's the way I want to go. What about ammo? As you notice, it comes with the standard default Stanag magazine that is dry. Now that I'm going through here and seeing the different magazines, there are 20 rounders, which are old school A1, don't need it. 30 round standards, 30 round that are clipped, 30 round that are taped. Oh, and it's even got a C-mag. Boom. Obviously you get rid of the old one. So now your printer stick, and what do you know? There's even grenades. So boom, you've just loaded it with that. You now have a loaded, configured weapon ready to go out on the field. But then you're looking at the price, and ooh, damn, that's expensive. That's over $12,000. I don't want to spend that. Because say you only have 15,000 in your inventory. Fine, that's cool. You just slide it back in. You haven't actually bought it, so you're not really selling it. You're just throwing it back into his inventory. While it's still in his inventory, it will retain that configuration until you leave and come back, in which the poor bastard has to go in and take it all apart and put it back on the showroom. But that way, say you're looking around, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to take some of the other crap I've got and sell it. I want that. I want it in that configuration and everything, so you can still take it. You don't have to worry about reconfiguring it all over again. And also allow you to compare the differences. So here's the 416. And let's say we want to compare the difference between the 417. We can still go back through here and for the most part try to configure it fairly similar. This one, on the other hand, does not have, he doesn't have another launcher in here, so we can go ahead and take the bipod. Same with the ammunition. I want to see what type of ammo is there, and look at that. takes drum. Okay, boom. So now by doing that, you're able to go through and you still have both of these configured. And you can compare the stats. So your 5.56 variant is just barely more accurate, but it's also heavier, probably because of the launcher. So that's kind of an unfair comparison. Both are using drums, so again, 5.56 slightly more accurate. It is also slightly heavier, probably because it's carrying 100 rounds instead of 50. Both have fairly similar ready times, rate of fire. Obviously the 7.62 is going to have more damage, but generally they're pretty close to being the same. So it's just going to be a matter of personal preference. Do you want to go with the 100 rounds of 5.56, or do you want to go with the 50 rounds of 7.62? This one's probably going to make for a better mid-range marksman weapon. You're not going to be wanting to get up close and personal if you're running low on ammunition. And it's also probably not going to be as stable firing it from the shoulder, or trying to get in there for close quarters. Again, for close quarters, you're probably going to want something a lot shorter barrel, probably with the foregrip, and you're going to want different optics, just different accessories. But when you're going through and you're looking through the stats, the general function of being able to fold and unfold is something you want to pay attention to. If you have weapons that are able to take accessories, it's also generally a good idea to go through and see. If you see something that can take an optic, but like that SIG, they don't have any compatible optics, that probably means you don't have anything in your vault either. You probably might not want to grab that weapon. If you're seeing something that is using accessories that you have an abundance of, maybe you should keep those accessories. On the other hand, let's say you're wanting to use a GP30. You can do it the other way. You can go back through, highlight that device, scroll through the weapons, and by doing it this way, you can see exactly which weapons are compatible with those accessories. So, for example, we wanted a weapon to use up all those VOG grenades that we've been stashing away. We can see that in his current inventory, he has one weapon that will take it. It's two weapons, but it's technically the same weapon. So I can see that that would be my choice. The other thing is, say you want something that's going to be able to take night vision. Earlier in the game, your selection of night vision is going to be limited, so you take what you can get. We know the Weaver rail is going to be compatible with basically everything. But say we found a G36 mount, we have to find a weapon that is compatible with that G36. Here, this is a Weaver rail mounting, so it's not going to be compatible with the standard model. But with this one here, boom, we've now converted it to have the night vision optic on it. Again, when you drop it in, it stays on until you leave. So you're able to go through and really compare stats either through your own inventory. Again, you can do the comparison where it will compare stats. So again, if we saw those two weapons that we pre-configured before, we can do a comparison this way instead of having to move your mouse all over the place. Just simply compare them. So it's a fairly nice feature. There are some stats that are there, like wear and dirt, as covered earlier. In the store screen, that's always going to be 0. Another thing is going to be your damage. You don't really want to pay attention to that. The reason is because damage is all going to vary depending on the specific ammunition that's loaded. If you're not too knowledgeable about firearms, understanding the damage numbers here is a little useful because you can see what its potential capabilities are. For example, the 458 SOCOM is a very big beastie round. Not as much as far as penetration, but knockdown power. These are popular with hog hunters. This thing will explode tissue. So it's going to have a lot of damage. The other thing that you're going to see on some weapons is going to be its durability. Generally, I don't pay attention to that because I'm cleaning and repairing weapons on a fairly frequent basis anyways. But you will see some weapons where their durability levels are low. For example, this model here is very low as far as its durability goes, which means you're going to be cleaning it and repairing it a lot more frequently. On the other hand, if you look at like some of the, obviously all sniper precision weapons are going to be like that, but if you look at the M60 for example, this thing can sit there and fire for quite a while. It's just made that way. A lot of the Soviet weapons you're going to see have higher rates, which means that they'll still function for a while if they're dirty, but they won't be quite as accurate. The stat that I was showing previously as far as balance goes, that's where the center of gravity in the weapon. For the most part, that's not going to make a huge amount of difference until you start getting into weapons. For example, a sniper rifle. The balance is going to end up being a lot more towards the front end, especially if you start having suppressors, drum magazines. The center of gravity is going to start shifting forwards on the weapon. That means if you're firing from the shoulder, which you should not be, firing from like a standing or kneeling position with those weapons, it's not going to be as accurate as if you were in a prone. Same thing with the machine guns. A lot of those are going to be front heavy once they've been loaded down. As far as your different accessories go, again, you'll have a variety of different optics. You have different sound suppressors. You'll also have launchers and Master Key shotgun attachments. You have lasers, flashlights, a variety of bipods, and then also for certain weapons you'll also have bayonets that are compatible. In addition to those bayonets, you also have throwing knives. Sometimes you'll even see things like machetes, crowbars, things of that nature for melee combat. As far as optics goes, the rating that you're going to be seeing is its distance. That's going to mean what distance it is able to effectively range your targets. For close range weapons, it's better to get something that has a lower range. You don't want to be using like a big ass 1,000 meter range scope like this on a close quarters weapon. You also don't want to be using one of these hollow sights on a sniper rifle. So you want to look through and choose one that is your personal flavor. For example, this one, which is your EOTech hollows, have a range of 110, while the aim points are at 150. It's not that big of a difference. They both are the same mount, and they're fairly close to the same weight. Personally, I just prefer the aim points because it's slightly less weight while slightly better range, but it's again personal preference. Some of them are going to have different mountings. So for example, with the ACOG, if you look down here in the brackets, this one is for the M16, this one is Weaver Rail. For the MCOs, you have one for the M16, one for the MP5, and then you have your Weaver. So some of these weapons are going to be set for specific mounts only. When you have different magnified optics, it's going to show you the angle of view, which is basically how many degrees you have for your angle. Obviously, the lower the number, the more narrow your view range. So that is definitely something you want to pay attention to when you're looking at those magnified optics. When you're using a full true scope mode, your narrowed views are going to mean it's harder for you to spot enemies approaching if you're not directly looking at them. Just keep that in mind. As far as sound suppressors go, each one's for various calibers. It is going to show you suppression rating. You don't really need to pay attention to that too much. Suppressor is a suppressor in this game. For the most part, every caliber will have their own individual suppressor. One example might include the SOCOM 458, which I can show you real quick. As you see, it is suppressor compatible, but there aren't any suppressors to specifically say they are for the 458. By highlighting the weapon, though, you can see here what's compatible with that weapon. We have two suppressors showing up. One of them is for the MAC-10 45, the other is for the UMP 45. Both of them have a suppression rating at 93%. The difference is this one weighs at 0.54 and this one's at 0.436. Obviously the one with the lower weight would probably be the better option. But again, if you look at the price differences, if you are just really hurting for cash, you might go with the other model even though it weighs a little bit more. Your launchers also, you have some that are going to use your Soviet grenades, the rest are your NATO grenades. Shotguns will generally take any shotgun shell round. Lasers, different mountings will vary on the weapon that they can be mounted to. Generally you have pistol, shotgun, rifle. Same with the flashlights. You have a pistol, shotgun, rifle. There are a couple of different rifle mounts because some are made to fit different rifles, such as those added by the latest mods. And as far as your bipods, with the bipod attached, there is no way to have it folded like you could in reality. It's simply on or off. With the bipod on, it does cause weight. It also causes a little bit of balance issues, so if you are trying to use a weapon with the bipod attached from a standing or kneeling position, you're not going to be as accurate as you would in the prone. But as you will notice with this Mark 48, for example, it has the foregrip in the bipod slot. So where the bipod would normally be, it shows the foregrip instead. That means that they are still able to have the bipod-like support as far as its accuracy bonus, even if they are in a standing or kneeling. That is compared to the generic Mark 48, which does not have it. Normally the weapons that are going to have a foregrip attached are specialty items. Some of the CQB models of the SCAR will carry it. But if you look at my personal inventory, I do have a few different weapons that bring that point. For example, for the M4s, you have a standard model which is able to take launchers. I also have a model that has been modified with a foregrip, so instead of taking a launcher or a bipod, it can only have the foregrip. The MP5, for example, this is a standard MP5 A4 variant, meaning that it has the fixed buttstock. This one also has a RS attachment for the foregrip. So this one cannot take a launcher or bipod, but for the most part now the MP5s can anyways. This just made it a little bit more accurate. This was not something you could buy in the store. These were something I had to custom order from Bobby Ray, from Aribe. I think one of the MP40s with foregrip might have also been seen as loot on one of the characters, but generally these are part of your custom weapons. Same thing with the MG36. These can be found in some of the stores later on, but the custom model with the foregrip was purchased through the Uribe character. So when you contact him, he's going to have certain modified special weapons, which, for example, if you're seeing some of these here, these are going to be with foregrips. MG35 with foregrips, G36s of different models with foregrips, M4s with foregrips, and here you can see he has different MP5, either A4, A5, or 40, all with the foregrip attachments. So if those are something that you're really interested in using, you're pretty much going to have to order them from him. Another thing to note is that when a weapon has modifications installed, one or all, doesn't matter, you will see the M icon, which is for mod. So like this one does not have it, there is nothing installed. This one can take accessories, currently does not have anything, so it's not showing it. This is a good way of just identifying quickly what does and doesn't have anything on it, just in case you're curious. This one, the mod symbol is not shown because it's a grenade launcher, so it obviously is going to have launcher part there. They also have a built-in optic, which you don't really use. Some weapons that have bipods installed, you cannot detach those bipods, just like you cannot detach the foregrips. Which weapon accessories you use is going to be up to you. Again, here's a good example. Currently I am using the 203 attachment, but there are times where you prefer to have the prone supported capability. With this character, by carrying the bipod in his pocket in the field at any time, if I need to go to the prone position and I feel that I would rather have the bipod, I can simply dump that on there, and within a couple seconds I've now swapped it out. I obviously will lose use of the grenade launcher until it's reinstalled. You're not going to like hold this against your forehead and squeeze it off. So if you stand up or kneel, think you're going to want the launcher, again, a couple seconds to swap back over again. Similar to how some of your snipers or other people might be wanting a night vision optic to be carried so that they can, hot swap between the installed optic. Usually, though, that would be one of the only times that I carry multiple accessories. And as far as things like suppressors, they are going to make a difference. It's going to be harder for the enemy to hear you. So if you start shooting at the enemy with the suppressor installed, there's less likelihood every single enemy on the map is going to swarm to your location. Without the suppressor installed, everybody knows where you're at. They'll pretty much instantly all just start converging on you all at once. To see the difference between suppressor and non-suppressor, I'll go ahead and show here the difference. That is without. That is with. Might be a little bit more difficult to tell because those rounds are hitting the wood, but these suppressors definitely do make quite a bit of difference. As far as flashlights and lasers, the purpose for those is that they improve your accuracy. So for example, the laser will show a range of 50 for the rifle, 30 for the handgun. That means that you're able to get a little bit of extra accuracy bonus within that certain distance. Same applies to flashlights. If you turn the flashlight on, you illuminate an area, therefore it's easier for you to see the targets, making it better accuracy to hit them. In the game, I do not know if using lasers or flashlights alerts the enemy, makes the enemy easier to spot where you are at. Honestly, I haven't noticed it, so I prefer to keep the lasers on. Any of my weapons that have lambs will keep them on at all times. I'm not switching them off for stealth reasons, and I don't think it has a difference. If it does have a difference, then hopefully somebody will let me know so that I can start turning them off until they're needed. Grenade launchers, again, you have a variety of different grenades that you're able to choose from. Choose whichever one you want. If you decide to go with a grenade and you want to switch out with a bipod or underbarrel launcher or just nothing, that's totally up to you. Suppressors are not something that you're going to find early in the game except for some of the smaller calibers. For example, when I was finding the very beginning stages of the game, I was using a lot of the MP5s, and I only had one suppressor out of 4 weapons. Later on, I started seeing MP5 SDs, but their stats were just not as great, so I just kept these until I found suppressors for all of them. Fighting several 5.56 rifles, such as Mini 14s, but I didn't want to use them because I couldn't find suppressors or magazines. As you get later into the game, you're going to start finding more and more of your common suppressors, but an example being the 7.62 sniper rifle suppressor, which is different than the assault rifle suppressors, or suppressors for some of your bigger guns, such as the JTAC. That is still fairly difficult. Even your SR-25 has its own proprietary suppressor. When I got this weapon, it was as a, I don't know if I purchased it or what, but it came already fit with the suppressor. This one, for example, the suppressor is integral. Same with this weapon. Some of the Makarov pistols or other weapons will have integral suppressors for them. Others do not. You have to go out and find them. This weapon, for example, the OICW, was kind of like an odds, like a side quest in order to find it. It has the integral built-in grenade launcher. So it's, even though it's one assembly, you can't take them apart. The only thing you can add to this would be the suppressor in your magazine. And again, as I noted in the previous guide, this one will only take either single magazines or taped Stanags. Will not take clipped or drums. So something to keep your focus on. Another thing is, when you very first start off, you only get a limited number of grenades. This one is actually a magazine-fed grenade launcher. Each grenade itself is not extremely powerful. It comes in only 2 variants. One is a standard HE, the other is an air bursting HE. Their fragments is actually not great when you compare it to some of the other 40mm. The big difference, though, is that these have a 6-round magazine for the grenade launcher itself. So you're able to carry the grenades preloaded into magazines, making it a little bit quicker to reload them. The air bursting grenade is something that's not available for the other American grenades. although it is something that the VOG 25P offers. As far as the suppressors go too, you do not need to use suppressed ammunition for them to function in this game. In reality, use of non-suppressed or non-subsonic ammunition in a suppressed weapon is going to kind of defeat the purpose a lot, because you're still going to hear the sonic crack. It just means that some of your pulse at the firing position is not quite as high. In this game, I haven't really seen a difference either with their standard ammunition or with the special ammunition. You will find on vendors some weapons and some calibers will have an ammunition available that states that it's specifically for suppressed use, but that ammo being subsonic, it also is going to have really crap stats, very low penetration, very low damage. As far as the ammunition and magazines, that will be covering in the next guide because there's a little bit more information involved. One last thing to cover with the weapons is going to be stances. You have fire from the hip, means just that it is a very short amount of time from the unready position to when he's going to bring the pop around out. If you're running around from building to building, room to room, if you see an enemy that comes out really close range, fire from the hip is what you would want to use. If you have a mission where you have to go kill somebody after you talk to them, talking to them will usually initiate combat. At that close enough range, if you try to bring a weapon up to your shoulder, they're probably going to kill you. So you went from the hip. Firing from the snapshot means they're going to fire from the shoulder, but they're not really going to aim. They're just going to kind of over the sides, just guesstimate. So he'll bring it up to his shoulder and then squeeze a round off without having too much accuracy involved. Aimed mode means he is not using magnified optics. He's probably going to be using optics such as buoys, backup sights, or aim points, red dots, hollows. It is going to be accurate aimed fire, just not using a magnified optic. Because this weapon does have the ACOG, we also have the ability to do a magnified view. So if you see from this view from the first person, he is not looking through the optic. On the other hand, using this, he is going to take the aim shot through the optic itself. ACOG be to 4 power. So now you can see it zoomed in. We are through the optic itself. The difference between all of these modes is going to be how quickly they can aim and get onto the target. It's also going to affect their view range. So if you look here, that's a little bit odd. So that is the range that his weapon's going to be able to fire out of. As far as his field of view, it's here. If I change to using an aimed view, you notice that does not change his view perspective. When I switch to the scope view, where he's aiming out of his scope, you can see it substantially narrows, because now he's looking only through that optic. Yet if we switch back out, so that means he's able to observe in a wider angle. The other thing that you want to consider is going to be your mode. You imagine this as your selector switch. You're going to have single shot, means 1 shot per trigger squeeze. Certain weapons are going to have a burst mode. This one, for example, has a 2-shot burst instead of a 3-shot. And burst means for every time you tell him to fire, he'll fire that many rounds. In automatic mode, he will squeeze off more rounds. This is a CMAG, so it is up to 100 rounds of continuous fire. We've already fired 10 rounds at this point, so we have 90 rounds left. while it is in straight up automatic mode. Right now the default is at 4, which means we will be firing off 3 to 5 round bursts. You can drag this all the way up to the maximum allowed in your magazine. So when you choose up to that point, he will stop firing either A, when the magazine is dry. So for example, if you have two 30s taped together, technically it will show you the option to fire 60 rounds. But if he has 30 per magazine, once it reaches the 30 mark, it might actually stop to tell you to reload. Also, if your weapon jams, it will stop and you will have to jam. This is him trying to cock the weapon. So if you get a jam, hitting H, which is again definable in your controls, will have him cock the weapon again, try and clear it. The other portion is for launchers. He has the underbarrel grenade launcher, that's why that option is available. If you have an underbarrel shotgun, that option is available. If you do not have one of those devices installed, it's not there. You cannot choose it. So that's that. Next one I'll be covering is ammunition.